River Wading Safety Level 1. Wading in rivers has occurred throughout the millennia for the purposes of drawing water for drinking, fishing for food sustenance, and religious traditions. Over the past several hundred years, the number and frequency of scientific river surveys requiring wading activities have increased as their societal recognition of the importance of water resources and water supply and quality distribution have become more evident, requiring field data. Such scientific studies have notably increased in the past 100 years with the advances in technology, allowing researchers, practitioners, and responsible governing water agencies to more effectively acquire field data in increasing frequency, distribution, and detail. Field sites also provide excellent training forums as they are the nexus between theory from the classroom, applications, and exposure to uncertainty which is associated with any natural system. Finally, field sites are settings where camaraderie is built between those that participate. One never surveys a river alone. You are always entrusting your life and safety with others and your field crew partners with you. Following a few simple safety guidelines and recommendations increases the assurances that we all will return from the field safely. Appropriate apparel. Dress for the conditions. Long sleeve shirts, recommended to be breathable, and hats are recommended to protect one against sunburns and insect bites, and in particular against tick bites. Wading apparel. Waders are recommended to be adorned, whether they be rubber, Gore-Tex, or neoprene, which prevents hypothermia from long-term exposure to cool water temperatures. It is of note, however, that in warm summer months, wading in shorts is perfectly acceptable. Waders also protect one against parasitic worms, such as leeches. They also provide an added layer of protection against skin abrasions and cuts when navigating over or around logs and rocks. Footwear. Many waders are accompanied with attached boots or can be purchased as separate items. In warmer waters, wading shoes or other foot apparel with rubberized soles are sufficient. It is recommended to acquire shoes with higher traction as they decrease the potential for slips, trips, and falls. Personal items. Bug repellent in the field is recommended as this provides a layer of protection against insect bites. Sunscreen is also recommended to provide a layer of protection against sunburns. Bringing a vessel of water to the field is also recommended. Although we're wading in a watercourse, most watercourses are non-potable water supplies. Bring food to the field as appropriate for your dietary needs and anticipated field campaign length. It is also of note that toilets are not available in nature, so please plan your day accordingly. Watercourse hazards. Stream banks are often slippery and unstable and sometimes steep. One should always be alert to the potential for slips, trips, and falls. There is always an inherent risk of drowning. Follow the wading safety guidelines. There is also a risk of encountering wildlife, whether it be snapping turtles, in more equatorial regions, water snakes, or mountainous region, large wild cats or bears. Please consult with local wildlife experts to gain knowledge of local wildlife risks. Situational awareness. If there has been any notable amount of rain, typically greater than approximately 5 millimeters in the past 24 to 48 hours, consider belaying your plans to go out during a period where there has been clear and sunny weather for at least 2 days. Check the weather forecast. Check the weather radar for your area, both before leaving and during your field campaign. In particular, in urban areas, if intense convective storms occur, such as in the summertime with thunderstorms, one may only have 10 to 15 minutes of lead time from the time a rainstorm occurred until a river is in flood stage. Site safety. Never go to the field alone. Always survey with a field partner. Know specifically where you are going and tell other responsible persons where you are going and when your anticipated return is. Those individuals can contact emergency services if you do not return in a timely fashion. In case of emergency, call 911 and then attempt to secure the site if it is safe to do so. If you are working in remote areas, an emergency plan should be developed which has the names, phone numbers, and quickest routes to hospitals and other emergency services. If you are working in remote areas beyond the reliable coverage of cellular telephone services, carry a satellite phone or a spot service. Site safety continued. Never enter into a stream where a hydroelectric power generation scheme is actively occurring upstream of your study site. Flow rates can change rapidly, known as ramping rates, as a result of flow requirements to generate power. It is common practice at sites associated with hydroelectric power generation that a siren be sounded prior to the release of water. This is an audible indicator to escape to higher elevations. Never wade in close proximity to dams, weirs, or spillways. There are recirculating eddies that can draw a person back below the water surface and nearer to the infrastructure. Site access. In Canada, the majority of watercourses are considered Crown land, which means that they are available to all persons. There are some notable exceptions along the colonist lands along the borders of the St. Lawrence River and the lower Great Lakes in Ontario and Quebec. In the United States, many watercourses are privately owned where they traverse through private property. If one is anticipating a river survey, you should always contact the local landowners and property owners to make them aware of your presence and your intentions. Enter the stream channel on shallow slope regions where the bank height is relatively low. Avoid entering the stream channel in locations of steep or overhanging banks. River wading safety continued. Never wade in a stream during high flow conditions. Wading should only occur during low flow conditions and preferably when you can see the bottom of the stream channel. Never wade in bare feet. It is common in stream channels to encounter shards of glass or metal, particularly in domesticated and urban watercourses. Use a stick, wading rod, a ski pole works perfectly fine, or a stadia rod to stabilize yourself and probe the depth of water in front of you as you wade. This would be analogous to walking with a cane. This technique will minimize the risk of slipping off the edge of a change in the bathymetry slope, common in pools around bends. River wading safety continued. Assess the velocities of the stream channel. Using your wading rod or other wading device, estimate the rise in the water surface on the upstream face of the wading rod relative to the surrounding water surface, here identified as parameter h. There's a simple relationship between the average velocity of the stream channel and the rise in the water surface on the upstream side of your wading rod, which relates to the square root of twice the gravitational acceleration times h. A comparative chart below identifies some average safe wading conditions. If one observes a 1 centimeter rise in the water surface on the upstream side of the wading rod, this relates to an approximate flow velocity of 0.44 meters per second. A common safe wadable depth at that velocity is approximately 1.25 meters or approximately the height of one's belly button. If the water level rise is 5 centimeters, this relates to a 1 meter per second average flow velocity, and a recommended safe wading depth in those conditions is approximately 1 meter or at hip height. If a water surface rise is observed on the wading rod of 15 centimeters, this relates to an average flow velocity of 1.7 meters per second. A safe wadable depth related to this velocity is approximately 0.3 meters, which is approximately the height of one's shins. If the water level rise is equal to approximately 20 centimeters, this relates to a flow velocity of 2 meters per second and is recommended that a safe wadable depth be no greater than 0.2 meters or just above one's ankles. If the rise in the water surface on the upstream side of the wading rod is equal to or exceeds 30 centimeters, this relates to an average flow velocity of 2.4 meters per second or greater. One should not enter the stream in those conditions. Here we will demonstrate a safe traverse across a creek. The person wading should enter the stream facing upstream and proceed carefully into the watercourse. A person should begin wading with slightly bent legs, similar to downhill skiing, to maintain balance, which will also allow a person to respond quicker to any imbalances caused by the flowing water. A wading rod should advance first in the direction of wading to test the stream bed for stability and to warn of any sudden drop-offs. A person wading should always face upstream so that the person can identify any debris that may be floating downstream and have sufficient time to move out of the way. Facing upstream also provides an additional level of consistency in wading based upon the forces of the water. The dimensions of waders are commonly narrower from one side of a person's leg to the other, in other words, from the inside of one's thigh to the outside, as opposed to from the front to the back of the leg. The resulting force from the flowing water around one's waders is smaller when one faces upstream as opposed to standing sideways in the stream channel, thereby improving balance and stability of the person wading. The force balance and wading stability is further demonstrated here by a person wading across a stream in a less than desirable traverse. Here, the cross-sectional area of each wader, which the water must flow around, is greater than that if one is facing forward. Also, when a person strides forward, the cross-sectional area that the water must flow around, i.e. the force against the waders, is doubled in a stride, which leads to greater wading instability. This is in contrast to facing forward, where the cross-sectional area that the flow must pass around the waders remains relatively the same. The consistency in facing forward then increases a person's ability to remain stable and predict the flow field more consistently in the direction of wading. River wading safety continued. Personal flotation devices, also known as PFDs, can also be adorned as an additional level of safety. Whether it be a wading belt or a PFD vest, they provide an additional level of safety against drowning. However, it is of note that in certain situations along watercourses, the use of PFDs are not recommended, in particular if a stream channel exhibits large numbers of woody debris. Often, in these situations, a person, if they were swept downstream, might be lodged underneath the large woody debris. The presence of the PFD would lodge the person within the debris pile, making egress out of this location more difficult. This would be similar to the situation if an aircraft were to have an emergency landing on water. In those situations, life jackets are not to be deployed until the person has left the airplane. If the life jackets are deployed before the individual leaves the aircraft and the aircraft begins to fill with water, the individual may be lodged within the cabin and not able to egress. Additional training. If you are planning an extended field campaign or interested in additional river safety courses, the following are resource gateways for additional training. Swiftwater Rescue Canada provides courses for kayakers and field investigations on swiftwater rescue. Canadian Survival also provides a series of courses on wildlife training and survival skills. Post-field activities. Close the loop. Notify the person that you told of your field plans that you have returned and you are safe. Notify your safety officer or supervisor, if any are applicable, of your return, your status of well-being, and any incidents that may have occurred. Notify your supervisor or technical support staff of any equipment that had been broken or fell into disrepair during your field campaign. There is nothing worse than returning to the field and finding your equipment broken. And finally, check yourself for ticks and other bite marks. Thank you for your attention. Please complete the online survey before proceeding.